life, not an illusion, something that's dramatized. Prison is real. If a God sees fit to throw you in solitary confinement, this is for real. In prison, Malcolm was an aggressive young boy. I admired it. I stimulated it. I felt that a black young man, over the period of 400 years in America, had been deprived of any aggressive thoughts. Even if you show aggressive thoughts before the white man, he would erase you, set you apart from the others as a villain. So, but I felt that in order for Malcolm, after my father's death and his mother's having gone to a hospital, I felt that it was my duty to stimulate his arrogance, stimulate his impulsiveness. Let him feel that life was the life that God gave him belonged to him. He didn't have to pay homage to anyone. This is how I guided him.
What kinds of influences do you think being in prison had upon him? What kind of effect?
In prison, I was able to really direct him into accepting facts as a guideline to life, not an illusion, something that's dramatized. Prison is real. If a God sees fit to throw you in solitary confinement, this is for real. Malcolm was able to see this and accept life from a realistic point of view. I think all of the illusions that he may have adopted in his youth from environment, I think he lost it in prison. I think he really saw life for real. And this was one of the most valuable assets that Malcolm did acquire in life, was courage, a matter of fact, to accept life from a realistic point of view. Nothing dramatized would interest Malcolm, nothing.
He became involved with the Muslims while he was in prison.
Yes, through my brother Reginald, he became involved with the black Muslims. And the black Muslim Islam, Elijah Muhammad gave him a chance to excel. Had not it been for Elijah Muhammad, I would have had to find possibly another field to project him through. But Islam, as it was then in a small, it was a very small thing at that time. And this gave Malcolm a chance to really excel and build the Nation of Islam. Much of the Nation of Islam is Malcolm.
Do you feel that being in the Muslims had a profound effect on Malcolm?
To some degree. It gave him a chance, as I said before, to recognize the needs of the masses of people. It also gave him a chance to recognize the lack of knowledge the masses contain. It also gave him a chance to recognize the fact that black people are their own worst enemies.
In what ways do you think black people are their own worst enemies?
We don't realize, many of us, that we are free.
Assalamu alaikum rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, everybody. I hope you're doing well. Hold on a minute, I want to switch my microphone. That was, of course, hold on a moment. All right, everybody. That was Sister Ella Little Collins. If you don't know who she is, I will introduce you. That is the eldest sister of Malcolm X. I thought today, being the anniversary of Malcolm X's death, I thought it'd be kind of cool to not celebrate the death, but also kind of celebrate the overall space in which this happens. Sister Satana is yeah, I saw it too as well. I peeped it a bit as well, Sister Satana. Great session last night. I hope that they're able to get it recorded and let people watch the session with Dr. Austin. She did an awesome job talking about Malcolm's, the Malcolm's sister, the older sister, who oftentimes is just gets overlooked. Like right now on TNT, they're showing a Malcolm X, Spike Lee's rendition of Malcolm X, and when it came out, for any of us that are Malcolm X-aholics, if you will, fans of Malcolm, devotees of Malcolm, and one of the things that really upset me was that Malcolm X, the movie Malcolm X had a whole dance scene, Fly Away, big dance scene with Spike Lee and Denzel Washington, and there was literally no mention of his sister Ella throughout the entire film. To me, it was more than a faux pas. To me, it was unacceptable. Before we get started, if you're coming in for the first time, forgive me, I had some technical problems. Still trying to work out some things. It will get better, brothers and sisters. Inshallah, it will get better. So let me, again, shout out. If you're coming on the show for the first time, get in the comment section. Get your shout out. Don't be shy. You're amongst family. If you don't even know me, my name is Preacher Moss. I'm the host of the S.O.S, the Shout Out Show. Thank you for coming. And also, if you don't mind, click the subscribe button and notification button. If you like the show, click the like button. We appreciate you. So let me get some of my Shout Out Show family right here. I actually was showing it through there. We got Sister Ree, our craft services and show dietitian. As well, we have Sister Sultana, our consultant producer, who makes this thing go so very well. And we have Sister Aika. She's actually checking in from Indonesia. She's doing good work, trying to make sure that her mother-in-law is nursed to health, and she's out there for a wedding, I believe. And we got my brother Altaf, my main man Altaf. Wa alaikum assalam wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, brother Altaf. Sultana, if you can, maybe you can get the link for the page for the presentation they did on Etta Little Collins, which is huge. Because I wrote a paper, I think it was the year before last. I wrote a paper regarding the autobiography of Malcolm X, and I really emphasized how important that Ella Collins was. Because we don't get it. We don't really fully understand. Like, it's not expounded on in the autobiographies. There's mentions of Ella, but not really talking about, her aggressive stance to keep the family together, her activism, the fact that in many regards, and it could be debated, but with her first husband, she married a Jamaican husband who was a Garveyite. So in many regards, that was the first exposure, if you will, to Garveyism and Pan-Africanism. So I think this is going to be hopefully a good talk. And if you have questions or you have information you'd like to share, please share it. So let me continue to welcome everybody. Brother Eric, wa alaikum assalam rahmatullahi barakatuh. Brother Eric, thank you so much for coming. My brother, appreciate you. And I got my brother, my main man, my little brother, JT, Johnny L. Thomas. Thank you for coming on the show. I appreciate you. So like I was saying, brothers and sisters, I thought it was really important because every year, and it's nobody's fault, but every year we celebrate Malcolm X's anniversary, the anniversary when he was assassinated at the Audubon, and it happens to be today. I just want to kind of change it around because so much stops with Malcolm X right there at the Audubon, and we don't understand how things kind of move forward. Little bits and pieces of information that everybody should really know, but they don't know. If you ever get a chance and you go to Boston, they still have the Malcolm X Ella Collins house, Ella Little Collins house in Boston. It's a landmark, as a matter of fact. But if you get a chance, go to the Islamic Society of Boston. They have something called the Ella Collins Institute. And I'm bringing this up because Ella Collins is a very pivotal person, not only in the life of Malcolm, but actually in the overall tapestry of Islam in America. Let me say it again. She has a great, profound impact on the tapestry of Islam in America. And in terms of that, even going further, she's really one of those first female activist leaders, black female activist leaders. Now, why would I say that? Okay, I'm going to tell you why. One of the reasons I would say that, but it's this one right here. It's the fact that Ella Collins said she went to visit Malcolm in prison. There's something that else that has to be said. What she's saying is that Islam came to the little family before, hear me now, before Malcolm got it. Now, I know we talk about that, and they don't really talk about the brothers and everybody who introduced him to it. But, there's a lot to be said about her activism, particularly around religious expression. What's not said more and enough, if you will, is that she had a lot of work and a lot of influence, and I want to say contribution, to developing the first mosque, the first Muhammad's mosque in Boston. Let me say it again. She's the one who has essentially helped build the mosque in Boston where eventually Malcolm would be. Now, if you want to go even further, last night they said she married 3 times. But what they don't say, that as a woman, she was an entrepreneur. That she was an entrepreneur, active. The idea that she was a secretary for Adam Clayton Powell up in Harlem speaks loads, brothers and sisters. And I say speaks loads because we're very prone to overlook the fact that she had a great idea of engagement, if you will, on this whole thing about what Islam is in America. She talked about almost being an architect for Malcolm's development, looking at historical imperative, going that this man is an aggressor, but he's not actually allowed to engage the aggression. And in that aggression comes his intellect. So you see, the intellectual property of Ella Little Collins is the fact that she has this vision. She leaves the Nation of Islam in the late 1950s. Why? Because she perceives the Nation of Islam as being very patriarchal. It's male-dominated. Okay, we're not going to argue that point. But the thing that's really, really amazing and really should be studied is the fact that she adopts Sunni Islam when she leaves. Hear what I'm saying? Sunni Islam when she leaves. And still has a relationship with her brother. And it's not ironic that when he leaves the nation, or the nation leaves him, however the narrative is, he is prone and positioned to engage Sunni Islam. And it's not foreign to him. The way it's pointed out so many times. Oh my gosh. He came to Hajj and and he discovered Sunni Islam. That's not true. That's not true. His sister had been practicing it. So Tana has something for us here. What's the name of the book? Hold on, everybody. I'm trying to get myself together here. Gosh almighty. It's one of these days. So, the book is called Seventh Child. In the interview, she talks about the prevalence of Malcolm being the seventh child from the second marriage of his father and mother. His father's second marriage. There was an impetus on Malcolm because he was the seventh child. It's also interesting, of course, that this carries true because they talk about Elijah Muhammad. They talk about the emphasis of him being the seventh child, too, of Elijah and Claire Muhammad. What I want to not overlook is that in many regards, she's ahead of her time. She's a businesswoman. She's well-versed. She has an ideology in terms of international politics. Let me say this again. International politics and local politics. This is before Hajj and things like that. Coincidentally, everyone knows that she's the one that gave him the money to go to Hajj. The story goes, and some folks, that somebody paid for Malcolm's Hajj. It was her that paid for it. And when he got there, he had to go through a certain situation of, because when you go to Hajj, you just can't show up. You have to have certain permissions and things like that. And there are stories about people who hosted Malcolm, and I don't dispute those stories. But what I do dispute is somehow, some way, he just magically showed up over there. Somehow, some way that there's not a narrative, a strong, compelling narrative that gets him from the United States to Mecca. And that strong compulsive, or I want to say really compulsive narrative, or compelling narrative, is the fact that he has a sister who is Islamic, and she's practicing Sunni Islam, fully understanding that his purpose and his guide was the Nation of Islam, and found somehow a medium. She never told him to stop being NOI, because even then she understood the importance of Elijah Muhammad in this particular place, because she's a strategist. Oh my God, I love this. She's a strategist. Even to the point that after Malcolm X is assassinated, she takes over his organization. Sister Ella takes over the organization and leads it for quite a number of years, till she had failing health in the late 1980s. But my point is, why are we not talking about it? Why are we not having an Ella Day, an Ella Collins Day? And why is it just separating from the narrative of Malcolm X? And I really, there's probably a lot of answers. Some of you can just jump in. Yeah, that's exactly right. She's an influencer, but she's an influencer on so many different levels. You know what they don't talk about? The fact that she had guardianship of Malcolm from the time he's in the 7th grade to the time he went to prison. So basically 14 years old to 20, or maybe 13 and a half to 20. I'm not sure. But she watches the evolution and devolution, if you will, of Malcolm till he winds up going to prison. And in her mind, she frames this thing like she understands. Does that make sense? She understands the role of a free-thinking man, free-thinking black man at that point in time, who doesn't have, I want to say, the deference to white society, the deference to Jim Crow, that she said she built in him an arrogance that he carried. And she said that arrogance, of course, it got him in trouble. Of course, it landed him in prison. But she's also saying that it can only happen that way. And I think the aspect of her being, like Sister Tana says, being an influencer is really a stroke of genius, because at this point in time, brothers and sisters, in the 50s, women aren't leaders. Women like Sister Ella Collins, or Sister Ella Little Collins, however you want to do it. Let's just call her Sister Ella. Women like Sister Ella are like women like Sister Clara Muhammad, who understand that with people like Malcolm, just like with Clara Muhammad, with Honorable Elijah Muhammad, realized that they had to pick these men up. They had to build men in the midst of racism, Jim Crow, and systematic racism. They had to build men up and make them into vestiges of people who could stand up to society. You didn't really have it in the 30s. You really didn't have it in the 40s. You really didn't have it in the 50s. And, Brother Jihad, whose show is on today at 6, Brother Jihad actually pointed out there's a thing called the Black Church with Henry Louis Gates. I've been watching that story. And the underlying story is it should have been called Women Built the Church. Women Built the Church. There's a street in D.C., North D.C., called Nannie Helen Burroughs Avenue. And Nannie Helen Burroughs was an advocate and a staunch theologian for the rights of women in religion. And here we have Sister Ella. Sister Ella. Like the Black Godfather, Clarence Avant. I believe she is that. if you take the women of the time, the just in the Islamic movement, which would be Sister Ella, Sister Clara Muhammad, they all realized that as women, they can't stand up and do leadership. They can't really be out front, brothers and sisters. They can't be out front. They can't make noise. It's awkward. If a black man can't do it, it's really awkward if a black woman can't do it. And being black overall, because I say, black women had, a double handicap. They were black and they were women. Standing up to a patriarchal society and a white supremacy society, it was very difficult. But herein lies the genius. Herein lies the strategy whereby they're going to improve the lot of the men who are around them, the men they're raising, the men that they love, the men who are supposed to protect them, and give them this religious framework, be it Islam, Sunni Islam, be it Nation of Islam. We're going to dust off our men and forget what society says. We're going to frame dignity for them. We're going to frame pride for them. We're going to develop a system or a new modality of evaluation whereby your pride comes from your neighborhood. Your pride comes from the ability to protect your kids, the ability to protect your woman, the ability to provide education and instruction, the ability to provide jobs and food and commerce and community and ecosystem. The ability to do that is the thing that all of us loved about the Nation of Islam. And Sister Ella does it. I don't know all about the first husband, her first husband, who's Jamaican, but their son was very, very attached to Malcolm. I think I have to research it because I think he's Muslim, but I think he may have gone to Hajj with Malcolm. So now you're talking about her sending her son with her brother. Woo! I mean, it's a lot of history to take in, and it's not to be overlooked, man. And I don't want to overlook it. I don't want to rush it, but I don't want to minimize any of this because it's not happening in a vacuum of Islamophobia. Because Islam, as she said, was a small thing. It was a very small thing. For the African American community, it was a spark. For the immigrant community, there was no really steadfast, large Muslim immigrant community. Let's be real. 40s, 50s, it wasn't happening like that. In fact, Islam lived vicariously through African Americans and the poor. But I frame Ella Little Collins as intellectual property because if you are a Muslim, particularly African American Muslim, we can marvel at her genes. And I'd say that, we can marvel at her genius, but here's why. Because there's a thing about when you can empower people, when society makes sure that you are not empowered, you are disempowered or disengaged. What you got? She offered to pay Hajj for Dr. Betty, but she didn't want to go. Betty went later. Yes, Dr. Betty went later. But there needs to be more paperwork, and maybe I'll check out that book, but there needs to be more paperwork about how she took over Malcolm's organization after he was assassinated, and even more so that organization had the framework of a Sunni, let me say it again, a Sunni Islamic identity while still being extremely pro-black, extremely love of black people. And didn't necessarily vary, there wasn't necessarily a huge variance because everybody had the same goal. We talk about the first resurrection and the second resurrection and things like that. We're not talking about this woman. Like I said, she leaves the Nation of Islam, which means that she had relationships with people in that temple. And she left while Malcolm was still living. She left, became Sunni, had a Sunni identity, while Malcolm was literally going throughout the country building. The story too often is we talk about Elijah Muhammad and him making sure that Wafdeen Muhammad and they got instructions in terms of Sunni Islam, but they never talk about her. And then to this point, I've always wondered, did they take the model from her? Did they borrow the model from Sister Ella Collins? Because it seems right around that same space. You know, they silenced Malcolm for speaking, they'd say, speaking out of pocket on the death of Kennedy. But you know, I had never heard anybody to this day really talking about Sister Ella Collins being a Sunni African American woman who's a businesswoman, who's an entrepreneur, who's politically astute, who's an activist. Like you can go to the Ahmadiyas back in the late 50s and 60s, and you had like Dakota Stanton, and they filed a lawsuit against the Nation of Islam. They didn't want them to be recognized as Muslims because they felt like they were misleading the people that they were Muslims, and that's over to the side. But even in that book that I read, which you should check out, it's called Becoming Muslim by Dr. Sylvia Chan Malik. But even in her book, she doesn't necessarily mention Ella Collins. This is a scholarly reading. She doesn't mention Ella Collins. I mean, there's a talk about Sister Claire Muhammad, but this is amazing, brothers and sisters. I mean, this is amazing. And yet, as amazing as it is, how profound that it is, and you start thinking about this woman literally could have changed the course of history for Islam, for African American Muslims, but African Americans, period. Changed the tonality, changed the language. You know, we're talking about her being a Sunni Muslim in the late 50s. The second resurrection doesn't happen until 76. Moving doesn't start until 76. Do you know you're talking 15 years earlier? You've already had this? I mean, I'm putting it out there because it's a fascinating thought, brothers and sisters, that this was happening. And of course, you know, I always, this day, if you will, normally I sit back and I'll read some Malcolm or read the autobiography of Malcolm. And, you know, I always felt like one of the things that Alex Haley cheated us on, there were a lot of things he cheated us on, especially Roots, but I won't go there. I felt like he cheated us on really significantly outside of Sister Betty Shabazz. He cheated us out of one of the most influential and important women in Malcolm's life and the movement of Islam in America. If you want to see the video, I think you go to Afro something. Just look up Ella Little Collins and you'll see the rest of the interview. But it's a fascinating interview. The idea that we now begin to see that this thing with Malcolm is not by chance. It's not by chance. They are, for lack of a better word, a very ingrained community with sensitivities about black nationalism, sensitivities about family structure. You know, she goes to save Malcolm. And in the talk last night with Dr. Austin, she points out the fact that, you know, it was Sister Ella that was writing the prisons to get Malcolm moved to better facilities, particularly better facilities that allowed him to educate himself, if you will. And I think this is the thing, and I don't want to ramble too long. I want to keep within my normal format time. We don't talk about her now. Yeah, and Sister Sultana, there's another video of her 20 years after that interview. Yeah, check it out. She's sharp the whole time. I think that should be pointed out. She's extremely sharp. Where did she go to school, Sultana? Somewhere in Georgia or something like that? But she's educated. She has her education, and she's an advocate, of course, for Black studies. One of the things that Malcolm had lined up before he left, you probably know this, but he had lined up scholarships with Al Azhar University in Cairo for anybody who went from the United States who wanted to go over and study. Want to leave here, go to Cairo, study Islam. Over in Cairo, you can either come from there or to Gambia, something like that. But I think it was like 20 scholarships. Does that sound familiar? Does that sound familiar? Of course it sounds familiar. Imam Muhammad Muhammad, may Allah be pleased with him, did the same thing. He sent people from here, sent students from here to go learn over there. But Malcolm's already doing that. Sister Ella's already making sure this thing happens, going back to the 60s, the mid-60s. So I'm throwing this out because I think we, maybe in some regards, I know I'll speak for myself. I won't say that for anybody else. I'm going to say for myself, though. Yeah, Sister Sultana's right. He had students go over to Syria. Malcolm had to go to Al Azhar, which is the oldest university in the world. What I'm saying is because I'm almost admittedly, when I first found out about this years ago, I was admittedly ashamed. I was admittedly humbled because the machismo of Malcolm is what we always sold. Malcolm's the man, and you see the movie. That's too much power for one man. And we overlook the fact that it's the power of a woman, it's the determination of a woman that molds him to be that man, to find that space. If you begin to pull this, and the Ellen Collins Institute, it tells you that their goal is to take classical Islam, Sunni Islam, take classical Islam and put it in a contemporary context. But isn't that Malcolm? Isn't that the transition of Malcolm X from the Nation of Islam to Sunni Islam? Isn't that it? From Nation of Islam to Sunni Islam, isn't that it? And we're not upholding this woman. We don't put her in the same space as Sister Claire Muhammad. We don't. And maybe I think she's on that level. I think she's on that level. Because no one else comes out of the Nation of Islam like Malcolm X. No one else. We may like Minister Farrakhan, and I respect Minister. Everybody knows that. But the profundity of a Malcolm X is something that cannot be argued. In a nation, admittedly, whatever the relationship they have with Malcolm X, you can't deny that that's a huge shadow. That it's an incredible shadow. Even to the point where it overshadows the intellectual property of his sister, Ella Little Collins. But here's my point, and I'll wrap up. This information is empowering. Two reasons why. Number one, we still have to have an engagement with this woman. If we're going to be any kind of African American Muslim or immigrant Muslims of merit and claim to know our history, we have to know this woman. I almost liken it to something out of Sir Koff, where Moses is looking for a sign. He's looking for a sign, and he comes across, Qadir, and that's a sign. Well, that was Malcolm's Qadir. That was the thing he was looking for. It was nothing else, brothers and sisters, that could have brought him to it. He doesn't meet Elijah Muhammad in prison. He's doing letters, but he meets his sister first, who makes an intercession with him. And through her idea of family and preservation of family, just the idea that, yes, she said the mother wound up in a hospital. That wasn't her mother. That was Malcolm's mother. That was her mother. She was that was Malcolm's mother. and she saw to it that the kids were still able to have access. They went and got guardianship of the mother. This is an amazing person. Sultana says she died in 1996 and no national mention of her. I have my thoughts on that. My thoughts is they don't mention that woman. My thoughts is they don't mention that woman because that's just way too much history. It's like that little string at the end of a sweater. If you pull it, the whole sweater falls apart. I think that she's that string for Sunni Islam in the 50s and the 60s, and also for the Nation of Islam. Because she's the woman, she's the strong woman that a lot of people weren't allowed to be back in the 60s, even in the NOI. She's that person. And I never read anything about her openly disparaging the NOI, She just said, it's not for me. This is who I am. Allah has moved me this way. Allah has guided me this way. And I'm still trying to fully comprehend and process how Allah moved her that way. There's not enough scholarship on it. Yes, I'm going to try and get this book and just take a read on it because, you can't find a lot of stuff online. You really got to piece stuff together through interviews and things like that. But just that whole idea that she understood manhood, African American manhood in the 50s and the late 40s, and she could put it in this man right here, and in many regards protect him. Because she was the legal guardian for Malcolm from the time he got to Boston to the time he went to prison. She was the legal guardian. And somehow, some way, in a place where women don't have rights, they can barely vote, they barely have property, somehow she managed to be a person that owns real estate, rooming houses. She had a daycare center at the temple, at the Muhammad's Mosque temple. They had a daycare center, so she's bringing business and commerce there. And somehow, even though her brother winds up in prison, she sees a way forward for him, pushes him on that route. And even as he's going on that route, when she says that this thing, the NOI for me is not working for me and how I see my relationship with God, I'm going to move on. She still manages to advocate for her brother as he goes through this process. And even when he leaves the Nation of Islam, she's there at the end to catch him. So this is a deep thought, man. This is deep thought. Sultana, maybe you need to do a show on this because this is a real deep thought. That when it comes for him to make this shift to Sunni Islam, so many people think that he went to Africa but she knew he doesn't go alone. She gives him the money for Hajj. And it's always presented like, here, Malcolm, take this money. She gives him the money for Hajj because she's knowledgeable about religious edict. She's knowledgeable about this is one of your 5 pillars. Malcolm ain't talking about a pillar before then, but he recognized I'm going to Hajj because it's one of his pillars. And it can come not only for just the financing of it. She paid for him, right? But she gives him the guidance. This is why you need to go. As much as I enjoy this topic, I immediately, I get a little antsy because I need to know more. Because at 54 years old, I wasn't in the 50s and the 60s, and when Malcolm was assassinated a year before I was born. I know a little bit about King, and Coretta. But this woman fascinates me. Let me say it again. This woman fascinates me because Malcolm fascinated me. But this woman is like, I gave you Malcolm. And so now it's like I think, Satone, I think we're going to have to do a whole nother show. Let me give a shout out to my mom checking this show out. Strength, preparation, and pay it forward. Yes. And I really want to know Because Malcolm always talked about his father being what? A Garveyite. His father was a Garveyite. She marries a Jamaican who's a Garveyite, for all intents and purposes. And she stays in political circles. You know, she's the secretary for Adam Clayton Powell. Back at a time with the bare roots of black activism and politics are going on. She leaves Harlem and goes to Boston. Everywhere she goes, she's put down roots. Everywhere she goes, she's established some level of entrepreneurship and self-identity and self-reliance. I mean, if you read the autobiography of Malcolm X, you know, his youth is a lot of things, but, you know, and this is the thing about the autobiography, which is incomplete, if you will. And even now, as I sit here, I believe that the Malcolm X movie is playing on TNT right now. I sit there in pain and sadness that Spike Lee, who I love, could not put together one scene with Ella Collins. One. Which leads to this sadness, this pervasive sadness that, for lack of a better word, either he didn't know or he didn't care. Both of them are crimes. And I even point out Denzel. Denzel, you need to talk to Spike about where's Ella? Because the thing we celebrate is the byproduct. It's the result of something. But we don't celebrate the cause. We don't celebrate one of the contributing factors. This woman literally said that if Islam wasn't there, she would have to find something else for Malcolm. Do you know how profound that is? That if Islam wasn't there, the way it was, she would have to find something else for Malcolm. That's deep. So look, everybody, I'm going to get out of here. I hope you enjoyed the show. This is our little potluck with Preach. I just thought that was an important piece. I think we put the thing up for, if anybody wants to go see the thing from last night with Dr. Austin, here you go. Go to Facebook.com. Go to Dwight Hall, /Dwight Hall Yale. Again, that's www.facebook.com /Dwight Hall Yale. Dr. Austin does an amazing thing. I'm just kind of hypothesizing because I really want to know. I can't know, but I'm really beginning to understand and connect a lot of things to her and Malcolm. You know, I've always done that. I've tried to do that, but you know, it's even more prevalent now. So, brothers and sisters, I appreciate you coming on the show. Let me give you one more shout out, if you guys don't mind. Please bear with me. We did something yesterday, and I'm going to ask everybody to please continue to support the Hogan family. Please go to, not Facebook.com, I'm sorry. Go to GoFundMe, help the Hogan family rescue. Is that what it was, Sultana? Help the Hogan family. Just go to GoFundMe.com and put in Hogan family, and they'll give you a whole breakdown. Again, there's something about when people who always help agents, now they find themselves help recipients, and we need to be there for them. Okay. So other than that, I'm gonna bounce. Let me give just a quick shout out, if you will, for our sponsors. You know, I normally have a runner on the bottom. I don't feel like it today. I had to give a little love to Sister Ella, but brothers and sisters, our sponsor is BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. Again, that's BeFinanciallyIndependent.com. You get to go to the website, register, and someone will get back to you expeditiously. Or you can simply call 1-800-679-3175. Again, that's 679-3175, and you can talk to the Harriet Tubman of financial freedom. That'd be Miss Maxine Cade, leading people out of the debt, slavery of debt. So check it out. Again, that's www.befinanciallyindependent.com, or you can call 1-800-679-3175. So I want to give one more shout out, and that's to you. That's you. For the Hogan family, please check out their GoFundMe page. They're doing well. They lost everything. They don't even have their IDs from what I hear. However, they have their health, and they're a very resilient group from what I'm reading, and may Allah guide and protect them. So I'm going to get out of here because I got things to do. I got things to do, brothers and sisters. I got homework to do, and I have some family stuff. But listen, you guys have been great. Make sure, again, if you get a chance, just look up Sister Ella. Go on YouTube. Look at some of the videos, and you'll know what I'm talking about. Because I can't fully explain it to everybody while I'm speaking to you, because it's just a lot of information, particularly in this format. So God bless you, and we'll see you again, inshallah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.
Hey everybody, this is your brother Preacher Moss. Listen, I hope that you enjoyed your shout out show experience. We'll be back with the next show, the next shout out show. A simple ask before you go, please help your brother out. Click that subscribe button, click that notify button, and I'll see you again on this side of the microphone. You probably wonder what that smell is. That's me. I smell good. And the reason I smell good is because I use oils from Tarif Attar. So I'm not saying you can't smell good. I'm not even saying you stink. I'm saying you have the opportunity to smell exquisite. Check out tarifattar.com for some of the best oils and scents in town.